deep, lasting peace. It is so deep. And the more you sit in that every day consistently for a year, you're going to know which one is the fleeting peace or the fleeting fun, and which one is the deep feeling of your intuition. And I think women have that. We have that so much, especially as we grow and we're mothers, and biologically that's what we can become. And if you do become a mother, you take care of every single thing about your child. Your child makes one little cry and you know exactly what that cry means. And so as a young girl, as a woman, is like fostering that intuition and deeply following that.
Welcome back to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, here. I am the one girl behind One Girl Revolution. So anything that you see going up on social media, if you want to get in touch with us, if you have a guest idea, a story idea, a topic you'd like us to cover, please message me at One Girl Revo. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You also can message us through our website, onegirlrevolution.com, or email us at info@onegirlrevolution.com. We are so grateful to each and every one of you who listen to this podcast and for all that you do to keep this nonprofit multimedia enterprise going and thriving. We've accomplished so much, and we have so much more to come over the coming weeks and months, and I can't wait to share all of the exciting things with you. But now on to the most important part. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, we welcome the incredible and inspiring Rannah. She is a dear friend of mine. She's a dear friend of the show, and you may remember her story because I've highlighted her and her incredible work through the years. Rannah and I got connected via social media and I think a couple of mutual friends years ago, and we just stayed in touch, and I've always been so inspired by her story, and by her work. Rannah is an American girl who always felt a deep connection to Africa. And after learning sign language and visiting Africa for a few months after high school, Rannah ended up moving to Uganda and opening up a school for deaf children. Rannah joins the One Girl Revolution podcast to share her powerful life story, how she ended up visiting and then moving to Uganda, how she ended up opening the St. Francis de Sales School for the Deaf, and all about the school, how they've grown and evolved, and the children and families they work with, and so much more. This is such an inspiring episode. You are not going to want to miss it. Here's my conversation with Rannah. Rannah, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Hello, Kate. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you. Some of our listeners may be familiar with you and your work because I feel like you and I have known each other for like years through the One Girl Revolution universe. And I've loved following all the great work that you're doing and following your journey and your story. And I'm just so excited to have you on to share a little bit about your work and just a little bit about all the great stuff that you're doing at the St. Francis de Sales School for the Deaf in Uganda. But before we get into that, Rannah, I would love to rewind and just hear a little bit about your own story, your own journey. I know that you always had a love as a young child for Africa, and that's sort of what led you on this path for what you're doing now. Can you just share a little bit about your life and your journey?
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on here again with you. It's been a long journey, I think, but like you said, there's always been something since I was a child. I don't know if it was through movies or things I had seen on TV. It was like this big, Africa thing, which is a huge place. So, and it just grew and grew. And mostly what it was is I just wanted to help people since I was growing up, just kind of relieve the suffering in others. And I was just drawn towards that. And as I grew older in high school, to fast forward, it was taking a sign language class in high school for 3 years. And then when I was 18, I had my baptism, and I contacted a school for the deaf in Uganda. And so it was, as I see my whole life, I just see like God drawing me closer to him. And, in many different ways and using many different things, but ultimately it was just a drawing closer to him. And working with the deaf was part of that, with working with deaf children in Uganda through my research in high school, and then going to this school in Uganda that had all these children that were deaf and no access to language. And so just being there and watching the teachers teach, watching the director, how he had his school, and learning Ugandan Sign Language, there was a turning point for me was a 17-year-old girl that was there, and it was her first day of school the day that I landed and went to this school, and I was 19. And so it was her first day learning a language. And I had, I have a language, and her being the same age as her really struck me. Um, and I just realized like just a deeper calling and movement of wanting to give a language um, to deaf people, to deaf children, because that's the way you receive people. That's the way you give yourself. Like, I mean, there's so much just within a language. And it just resonated deeply with me, and I wanted to continue that.
Yeah, well, I think that your story is so inspiring to me for so many reasons, but um I love that you were just this young person. You were like, "Hey, I have this interest," and my sisters are kind of similar. One of my sisters learned Japanese as a young person, and she was like, "I just want to move to Japan" from a very young age, and ended up doing it, and like it changed her life, and now she's working for a Japanese company and doing work over there. And so I just firmly believe that when these types of things are put on our heart, placed on our heart, especially as a young person, but it can happen throughout our entire lives, right? Like I believe that life is full of many chapters, and maybe there's something that people that are listening, something's been on your heart since you were a child, like you, Rannah, or maybe it's something new that you have a new interest. But I think it's so important for us to listen to that. And maybe it doesn't mean that we're going to like move to Uganda and do all the great work that you've done through the years, but maybe it's like, okay, what can I have this interest, or I want to support this community. And I think one thing that's interesting to me about Uganda, and I've never been, but just through your story and through some of the other organizations that we've covered through this podcast, Imprint Hope with Claire Byrne, just hearing about how there aren't resources for especially people with disabilities or families who have a child with some sort of difference. There aren't resources. I mean, sometimes in America, there aren't enough resources, right? But over there aren't resources. And it's really, people are looked at, people who are deaf or have other differences are looked at as not human or second class citizens. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Hmm. Yeah, so it's been really interesting. So when I went to Uganda the first time, I was in the capital city of Kampala, where there's a lot more access to things, to schools, to education materials. So that's the first school that I was at. And then the director of that school, we took a trip, and it was like an 8-hour drive to the West Nile of Uganda. And that's where there isn't schools for the deaf. There's a unit school for the deaf, which is just a hearing school. And then they have, their deaf unit. And so depending on where you go, I've learned a lot, and it just depends on family to family and person to person. There are very tragic, heart-wrenching stories of, deaf students or just deaf people or children with disabilities being treated way less than others. I mean, we've had cases of students tied to a tree, really abused, malnourished, obviously not given a language, and that plays into so much because if you cannot speak for yourself, I mean, think about that. So you can't stand up for yourself. That's a lot harder. And if something were to happen, how are you going to tell anyone? How are you going to describe? How are you going to share yourself? And so, and then there's a lot of like, I would say just unintentional neglect, or they just fall behind. The deaf, they just fall behind because all their siblings are going to school. Like if it's a family, everyone's going to school. Maybe you don't have access to a school for the deaf in your area, and the schools for the deaf in the cities or, in another place, they're really far away. They're more expensive to go to because it's going to be a private school somewhere. And so you're left at home, your parents are working. And so it's just kind of like, as I've learned, and like an unintentional, neglect, like from the families, they're not trying to like hurt their child, but you're kind of left there. And so then you're more susceptible to getting hurt or strangers or being left somewhere. So that's been a lot. And then there's been a lot of really, great stories with a lot of our parents that have just been searching and yearning for a school to send their child. And they are so supportive, so involved, love their child, have been trying to learn sign language with their child. And you can see those students really excel because their parents are so involved. And so we've definitely had a mix. And then, like I said, we have had students that have, after we've taught them a language, they have been able to share back, hey, this is what's been happening to me since I was a child or for the past couple of years. And some of those stories are, I mean, absolutely heart wrenching, hard to listen to, but we've been able to take steps to prevent certain things from happening again and to help give these children counsel. And because of the language, they're able to, talk about it, and we can discuss with the families or, find like help the family find a different place for the student to live. And so there's a lot of different things. And sometimes being out in the village is a lot different than the city.
Yeah, it's kind of the same here, right? If you live in the
Yeah.
country, there aren't necessarily as many resources, but if you live in the city, there's more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always thought it's interesting because we don't know, right? Unless we've been there. And so just hearing that experience, and also we need to open our eyes to what's going on in the culture, in the world. And I had a conversation with one of our dear friends here at One Girl Revolution, Dr. Laura Biaggi, and she taught this storytelling class to incarcerated women at Cook County Jail in Chicago. And she said something years ago to me that just has always struck me. And she's like, how can people move beyond something that's happened to them or something that they've done? And this is talking about incarcerated women, of course, if they don't know how to talk about it, right? If they don't know how to share their story. And so just thinking about people not having a language, and not being able to communicate, and just like how I can't even fathom what that feels like. And so it's so beautiful that you're opening up this opportunity in the school. Your school is opening up this opportunity for people to sometimes, like that 17-year-old girl that you mentioned, learn a language for the first time ever, or learn how to communicate, and how empowering that must be for people.
Hmm. Yeah. So for myself, growing up, it's really easy for me to relate to the students, even though we grew up in different worlds. Obviously, I'm hearing, they're deaf. And so there are so many experiences that they have that I don't have. And I can only imagine them, and that's it. However, it's exactly what you said of not having the language, feeling like you don't have a voice. And so that's what I had as a child. There was certain things that happened to me the way I grew up. It was pretty rough. And I harbored that very deeply, and I'm very much an empathic person, very much a feeler towards other people and things and circumstances. And so I held a lot of that in. And growing up, being, a younger teenager in like early high school, having all of that was so incredibly difficult for me. And I wasn't talking to anyone about it. So I had a lot of these things like anger and depression and self-hate, and didn't know even how to discuss things that happened to me as a child. Um, and so growing through that and then becoming baptized, getting a spiritual director, going through counseling and stuff, right? I had a voice. So was able to share with people and grow and heal and change. And so seeing our students, it's just easy for me to relate and to also share with them and allow them to share back with me that I really do understand, and I really am trying to encourage them and give them a voice. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've had like it's really hard for students to trust someone. It's like, who do you trust? And especially if you've been hurt by an adult or just hurt by anyone, then it does kind of break that bond of trust with people, and it kind of breaks you down. And so over years of being with these students that we have 50 students. And so being with them, and then like our kind of young adults that we have, they're not young anymore. They're just these group of deaf adults that we have. So it's been since 2016 walking with them. And then the countless nights that we've had where it's like one-on-one with the students, and they're able to open up and share, and you can share back. And it's all thanks to having a language. I mean, in 2017 is when our school officially opened, and it was the chaos of having all of a sudden we had like 30 deaf children and nobody had a language. So it's just like, Mom, what do we do? And it was just repetition, repetition, teaching a language. And so fast forward all these years later, now full language comprehension, of course. And so it's a way that they can communicate. I mean, just the simple things of like your feelings. You need to communicate those all of the time to somebody. And so to be able to have that back and forth, and um, the great thing also about our school is it's such community because it's a private boarding school. So now these students have been growing with each other and they're all deaf, and we have several deaf staff. And so we really are a community and a place where they can just be themselves. Like it's
Mm.
normal to be deaf because everyone is deaf, and a lot of our staff is deaf as well. And I really like that part because I know some of our children, they actually like some of the students, they are sad when they go home, you know, because they won't have this community of people that know their language and then are able to just share so much back and forth. So it's just really a beautiful thing for me to relate to the students, to kind of know where they're at and to help them along of like, um, everybody wants to be seen, basically, right? You want to be seen from the depths. And in order to facilitate that, I mean, is to give some sort of communication, some language, some way of receiving someone, and then also giving yourself to someone else.
That's so beautiful. Rannah, so I want to go back to your story just a little bit and how the school started. So you're over there as a young person, 18 years old, you're working at another school. How did you go from that to being like, bingo, we need to open up a school? Like, how did that, was there a spark moment? Was it kind of a series of different things that happened in order for you to open up this other school?
Yeah, so I was 19 and I was at this school called Boanerges Deaf Initiative, and I'm very good friends with the director still. He's great. And so I mean, he mostly helps me and mentors me on stuff because he's been doing this a lot longer than I am and than I have, and he's Ugandan. So he knows everything. So it almost is silly at this point how this happened, but it was, I think, spiritually happening for both of us at the same time. I'm at this school and I'm not teaching or anything. I'm not a teacher. So I'm, playing with the kids. I'm helping him with some like, internet stuff or how to get more donors and things like that. And I'm learning Ugandan sign language. And then it was term holiday, and some of those students are from the West Nile. So they're from actually the town that I've been living in. And he said, I think God wants you here. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, look, there's nothing for you to do here. And there are no schools for the deaf up here. And there's so many deaf children. And so the whole of West Nile, there isn't any schools for the deaf, right? There's only these unit schools. And so we basically just got on a bus to take these kids home for the holiday. There was like, I think three of them. And there was a first of many experiences. At that time, I had a GoPro, and so I still have all of my videos that I was making, just talking to the camera to figure out what was going on. But something unexplainable, obviously, and just deeper in my heart was taking place. It's absolutely beautiful. It was the first experience that I had of a lot of people living in mud huts, because we were in the city at this other school. We're in Kampala. It just looks like a giant city. I mean, with malls and cafes, restaurants, like nice cars, whatever. And although this school was in like a slum area, I will say that we go out here and I met Father Emmanuel. I met one of the priests out there. We visited these churches. We just went around on motorcycles and just drove throughout this area. I was captivated. And of the fact, of course, all of these people without a language, all these, deaf children. And we came back. I just took it to prayer. I kept in contact with Father Emmanuel, but it wasn't even like maybe 6 months later, he had already spoken with the bishop, and they had already said, oh, we have land for you. We want you. They invited me to come back and live there, just kind of hang out for about 5 months and see if I could live there. They said, learn the spoken language because it's a different language over there, and learn the culture. So I came back to the States for about a year, and then I flew back to Uganda and I stayed in this place, and I wasn't sure if I was going to work with the deaf, to be honest. I mean, my heart just wants to serve. And we had spoken so much about working with the deaf, but like how, I didn't know, or working with like young teen moms or something, just helping. And the bishop, he called me after 5 months, and I went to his office and I sat there nervously, and he told me about this facility in Yampeya that they have. And he said, I want you to start a school for the deaf. You'll start with 30 kids and, just do it slowly by slowly. And so we did that. So that was in 2016. We started all the preparations, and in 2017 we opened our doors. And I work with the diocese, so it's a private Catholic school under the diocese. So thankfully, I can't mess anything up too much. I have them. They, provide all of the board and the hierarchy, and the protection and the guidance and helping us get staff. And so it's been really beautiful, just like working hand in hand with the diocese. But that's kind of how it all came together. And then we just have been growing ever since. We have a lot more land right now, but that we can build on. But right now we just have our 50 students, and we've just been going since 2017, slowly learning how to do this, getting more staff as the children have been growing, right? We've had the same students since 2017. And so it's just been like growing with them every school year and getting, more staff for that upper level and things like that.
It's just so amazing what you've done. But your story too, I love that it's like you put one foot in front of the other, right? You had this vision, but also like you have the support system. And I always think about stories like yours or anybody else that we have on the podcast, like we need community, we need support. And so even like the diocese stepping in and being that support system for you and being like, you don't have to do this alone. And that's all of us, right? Maybe we are supposed to found an organization or start a school, but maybe we're just supposed to support someone who's already doing it. And so we all have a purpose. We all have a place in this world, and we can all do good through our lives. Watch One Girl Revolution's Emmy-nominated short documentary, The Girl Inside, on our YouTube channel or at onegirlrevolution.com. The Girl Inside features a poignant look at the stories of incarcerated women within Cook County Jail and a life-changing academic course taught by Dr. Laura Biaggi called Storytelling as a Healing Art. This short documentary reunites Dr. Biaggi with 5 of her former students for a special one-day course on the transformative power of our stories and our voices. And what is revealed is the girl inside. Watch the Emmy-nominated short documentary The Girl Inside today on YouTube or at onegirlrevolution.com. So Rannah, I want to have you just like paint the picture for people that are listening. I know you shared a little bit about the St. Francis School for the Deaf. Can you just paint a picture? I know you started in 2016, 2017, and then I know it's grown and evolved. I know it's a boarding school, but tell people about the school and kind of paint the picture for all of us.
Okay, so it's a private Catholic school. It's great. It's a boarding school. And now our students are older, but we started out taking age 3 to 12. And then we kind of cheated and took like a 16-year-old because, we just couldn't say no. And so we can't take any more students in. So that needs to be known. That's been actually really difficult, is because there's so many, as our school has grown in people knowing about us, there's been a lot of parents either like, getting our phone number and saying, hey, can we send our kid? Or they'll just show up at our doors at the beginning of terms or during or at the beginning of the school year wanting to send their kid there. And we haven't been able to because of our facility, but they come every year. It starts in February, and then we have 3 holidays, and they live at school. So we have gardens, we have goats, and we have chickens. They're living here. So it's doing also life things like your everyday life skills. So it goes beyond education. We go to church every morning. It's in an absolutely incredible and lovely place. I like where we are because it's not so busy, but we have our space and our sort of silence. And so they come and they've been learning a language, and we have, we do a lot of sports, we do a lot of games. I've been able to get so many different types of materials, games from schools in America, like from my community where I'm from. So people have donated a lot of school materials, which I love, just like games and things to learn with, to build, and then getting a lot of things from the capital, Kampala. So I really believe in learning through play and learning through like interaction and stuff. And so that's really been beautiful to do with our children, like teaching them how to play chess. And so now like everyone's playing chess and they're all running around. So I just think it's quite beautiful. We finally had our 2 older boys. They did their P7 exams, and they've made it to secondary school now. And so they're just leveling up. And we have, it's just green, rolling hills, village life. Like it's beautiful. And there's like a valley down, and that's where we get our water from. And this hill up here, the diocese also has given to our project. It's around 25, 30 acres of land that we're going to be building on. And so we're building a nursery, primary, secondary, and vocational schools, all for the deaf, all boarding, so that deaf from, because the West Nile is huge. So deaf children and then deaf adults, that's why we need the vocational school, there are deaf adults out there now, and it's hard for a deaf person all over the world to have access to getting a job, because of the language. So that's a difficulty that just deaf people face in the world. And so we really want to like be able to have, the 4-year-olds come to school and start learning language, and then a place for adults that if they need to learn a language or learn a trade or something, that they can come to. So we have this whole vision and project that we've been working on slowly. And then we have our students here, and they're so excited about this place. We'll go and visit our land and play soccer on our land and stuff. But it's just a beautiful place for me. It's become a sanctuary for the children. And I've realized that because of, I mean, some of the students perhaps like they don't live in the best of places. And so, or maybe have like a lack of community support. And so when they come to our school, it is this place of rest, this place of silence. And it's beautiful, and it is a sanctuary for them to have such a community and a safe place to just be who they are created to be, which right now is just a kid. They're just supposed to be kids. They're just supposed to play and have a language and be with their friends and learn and grow. And that's really beautiful, to be able to provide such a safe, loving, and caring environment. We have so many great staff. So we are, it's 24/7 around the clock. There's always people awake, even at nighttime, right? To be there for the kids, to, make sure if they need anything at all. And we have like our dogs, and it's like a home. It's like a big home, but so it's just really beautiful.
It just must be so transformative for everyone, right? For these kids that are coming through, but even for the staff. And I'm sure you all have like grown and evolved. And also when you're building something, I think that's what's also cool, is like you've been doing this for a while now, but also it's still kind of in its new stages too. And like you're on the verge of some really big things as well. And it's kind of beautiful that you can all kind of grow and evolve together. And you must be like a proud mama seeing all these kids like grow and evolve, and sometimes go from a place where they can't communicate, or they don't have a language. And so like seeing them, watching them grow and evolve and be empowered, really, I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but it's like, that's so empowering to be able to communicate and be able to, share what's on your heart and share your personality, like in new ways.
It's so incredibly important. It's so important. And um, it's, God has taught me this. It's wisdom, right? Only given from God, that to watch. So some of our students we got when they were 3 years old, which is pretty young to go to a boarding school, but they have no language, and we didn't have the resources to like get to people's houses and like teach them every day. So their parents send their students to us. So it's really hard for those kids to give someone a language. Like it's incredible to me. And so I could talk about it for like, eternity. Watching that grow and watching that flourish, it is actually empowering, and giving them the option of like, what do you want to do? And sometimes the first response is like, I don't know. And it's like, no, I'm asking you, like, what do you want to do in life? Like, what kind of work do you want? Do you want to be a mother? Do you want to be a father? Like, let's discuss that. Let's discuss friendship. The Bible stories have always been fun also to teach for the first time, because you get to see their reactions, and they're just like watching. And sign language is so visual. It's so like acting out like a story. And those are some beautiful like highlight moments that I have, is just like we're acting out stories, or we have like a book that we're reading from, but we're signing it and acting it out. And it's almost like you can see their eyes over the months of learning sign language, and then the years just growing bigger and bigger and just like opening up to the world, right? And I mean, literally teaching about the galaxies and the stars to me is incredible. Talking about the planets with children for the first time. And I know all teachers and parents get to do this with their own kids, to watch them grow, like learn a language and learn new things. And so that aspect is just like, it's so incredibly beautiful, and it is really empowering watching them do things. So there's even one of our kind of like young adult friends that we had in 2016. Well, his parents have sent him to school since he was a little kid. And so we just kind of came in and helped them with secondary school fees. That started in 2017. And well, he finished secondary school and now he's a teacher at our school, and he's incredible. And he's deaf, and he's brilliant. Like he's just incredible. And so we've already seen the fruits of what a deaf education can do. He didn't go to our school, but because he's already older, you can see the importance of education is you can continue on with life and go do whatever you want to do, right? And so it is, I know empowering can be overused and probably can be corny in some ways, but that's really what it is you're kind of giving someone a life in their hands. You're giving them a language, you're giving them opportunity, and you're just handing it to them.
It just opens up the world, right? And
Mhm.
just how language can be so powerful, and just being able to communicate and share and learn and grow. It's incredible the work that you're doing. Rannah, so on that kind of same note, I know there are so many stories, there's so many individuals that you've worked with, and you've seen these stories of evolution and growth. And like, like I said, you must be such a proud mama. Is there a story or two that you can share of maybe one of the students that really kind of exemplifies or embodies why you do what you do and why your work is so important, that you could share?
Without giving too much detail, yeah, and of course it's like, one of the hardest stories. So this isn't the norm, but um this is why we do what we do, so that this doesn't ever happen, is just a child being that we were made aware of just being neglected and abused, and living with like distant relatives. And so not even the mom and dad, and finding this child with just multiple disabilities, and getting this child to our school and being told, first of all, this child doesn't walk. And when we picked up this child, what was interesting to me is how happy the child was to come with us. And usually, when you go out in a village and maybe you're like a white lady that a young child hasn't seen before, you might look weird, you look funny. So, who is this stranger person? And you have no language to give to them to explain you're going to go to a school. And we took this individual, and they were so happy. And so that's the I have the very first visual memory of picking up this child. And now watching this child, first of all, get a language, is more than able to walk and to run around with a lot of help and a lot of good therapy. And love is the most important thing. Actual genuine love, like a hug. I don't know if people know how important that is. Seeing a child, or just seeing a person in their face and giving them love through your eyes. You don't have to have a language. You don't have to have, and even if they were to be blind, then it is this touch. It's being with somebody. Um, I've like, again, I am an empath, so that's my whole thing. Is just loving other people and seeing them as they are. And I think that child story is the most impactful for me. Um, that child stays with us all year round, actually, and is one of just the most beautiful little people that I have ever seen. And watching the language growth, and watching them be able to complain to us and cry about silly little things. It's interesting watching some of the children cry about little things, like having a little scrape and they just want a band-aid because they just want attention. And so you give attention. And then there is a story, well, there's a few, but we had like a stubborn student that came in. And so it was like he was just like mischievous and really stubborn. And a lot of tough love later. He's one of our best students. He's like head boy, he's the leader, and it's just like giving them love and the ability to like prosper in what they're doing. And then we also had another student who I'm not sure of their home life. We just were told to take the student in from the trusted words of a priest. And so we did. And he told me like a bit that I'm not going to share, but we took that student in and watching them as well just transform, going from all of this anger and rage on the inside, because if you can't communicate, you're angry, right? And that's with every person. They, you know, in any type of friendship, relationship, family, if you feel like you're not being seen and heard, then or you can't communicate well. And so you're just like harboring all this anger. So watching that through our students and our children who are just like yearning for love and attention and good like affection and friendships and mentorship. And so you have like what you could say is like stubborn students at the beginning, but it's really it's just a child, it's just a kid. And watching the years of that flip, that's incredible. Like their whole personality actually gets to come out, the real personality, and you get to remove all of like this ugly, you know, shame and anger and self-hate and realize you're just a person. So I can't give too many details about like our students, but there is like those stories that come to mind. And then there's also, just to continue, is during COVID, we were closed for 2 years. So all the schools in Uganda were, so that was incredibly difficult. And we had two students who people, if they're following on Instagram, they followed through that as well, that had severe, one of them had an infection in the leg that grew so much that like the bone broke and it was like bending. It was horrible. So we had to do all kinds of surgeries, and but it was so badly infected that this took a long time because the doctors couldn't even do surgery because of like the skin infection. So they had to fix that before they went in. And then we had a student that during those 2 years we didn't know about grew a tumor so much that it was moving his whole nose and causing airway like breathing problems. And because of our school, those were major surgeries that we had to do. We did them at a very good hospital in the city. Like obviously we found the best place we could for these students. And if it wasn't for our school and our donors and people sponsoring, these children wouldn't have got that. That boy probably would have, I don't know, lost his leg or his life because of the infection. It was so deep and it was so bad. And they've fully recovered from their surgeries. I mean, it was, you know, months and months and like a year of recovery for all of these things, but that's a different side, that it's not only about education, but we cover all the medical costs. So it's like dentists for some of our children, it's eye problems that they've had. We've had a student like break their elbow. And so it's doing absolutely everything for them. And our school is thankfully right next to the hospital. And so we just like, you know, it's like a minute walk just right there to a really good hospital. And so um, there's just, there is so much with our school, and we are so grateful to have this support because it's supporting a whole child and every part of their life, you know, from their uniform and their education to food and, you know, picking greens out of the garden because that's daily life stuff, and then their medical costs.
It really is a family, right? Like you
Mhm.
mentioned that earlier, like it is this wraparound, it's this loving, supportive family. But even I'm envisioning as you're talking, just stability is the word that comes to mind. And that's so important, so critical for children, right? To learn to feel loved is like they have to feel stability. And you guys are really providing that through the school. And then like these wraparound services, whatever they need, we'll figure it out. And what a great supportive community with your donors and everyone else who's involved too, to support these kids. It's just incredible. If you want to be a part of the revolution and support the work we're doing to uplift women's voices and their stories, please consider donating to our 501c3 nonprofit organization. Every dollar goes right back into the work that we're doing and will allow us to tell even more stories of inspiring women and girls to inspire and empower the next generation. Donate today at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. Rannah, I know you talked about, you kind of teased some of the things you have coming up. I know that you have big plans to build on this new land. What is next for the St. Francis School? What can you share? And where do you go from here?
Yeah. So we have this land, like I said, this big chunk of land, which is absolutely beautiful. There's nothing on it. So it's just green and hilly and beautiful. So our plan, the facility that we have is these small buildings that the diocese already had, and they're like connected to the parish, and it's right surrounding some other schools, and like I said, the hospital, and then there's like a convent of sisters. So we haven't been able to take in any more students because the facility is there and it's already small, and there's no more room to build because of how it's located with the parish and with this chunk of land, and with how many deaf families have contacted us. We've had deaf people contact us, I mean, from really far away, like 12 hours away, wanting to send their children here. We're also right on the border of Congo. So there's just so many families that would want to come to our school. And so that is the goal, obviously, is to build these classrooms, have it all separate, our nursery, primary, secondary, and then vocational schools. That's why there's a huge chunk of land, staff housing for everyone. And that's what we've been trying to do. It is the biggest thing I I have ever had to like take on. As we were talking before, having like when I was like 2021 is like, oh yeah, we'll just build a big school, like no big deal. Okay, well, it's a really big deal and it's really hard. And there's like a million aspects to it that I'm learning every day with the diocese. Thankfully, we have like the diocese does the giant work for me, which is, like picking the engineers for this and the water and like making the connections. And we work with like the education department and the government, and they make sure these meetings happen and all the ties happen. And it is so many things apart from just the money, so we are still fundraising for our first set of classrooms. We need $250,000, and we are nowhere near that goal. So besides the money aspect, it's also just been like the practical things on ground, like finding the right team of engineers. And so there's a ton of things happening. We've already dug our borehole, so we have that done, and we have the funds for our water tanks, so we have that chunk done. We've had the land blessing ceremony, and I have drafts with with our architects and engineers of how we're going to do, I mean, this whole land. So those parts are all done, and we have our like I said, the first classroom. So it's just a matter of kind of the funding, so we can start clearing the land and building. We're going to do it, slowly by slowly as the money comes. We'll build. That's, the Ugandan way, and we follow the diocese. But that's kind of what we have going on right now. We want to open up a big enough facility when it's all done to have like 500 deaf people be able to come, 500 deaf students, which is huge. And it's a dream and it's beautiful. And our students at our school, we're always praying. Like I said, we'll visit this land because it's not too far of a walk. And so we're always praying over our land. Like I've walked it so many times. You walk the perimeter. We've gone with like big bottles of holy water just to bless it and just pray over our land. And we've gone with like the village elders, who some of them, their grandfathers are the ones that like gave their land to the diocese to be used by the church. And so meeting them has been really beautiful to hear like their stories and how they grew up, and how excited they are for the future of, I mean, being the first school for the deaf in this community. But I mean, West Nile, but in this community, and to have those people a part of it, like to see how excited they are. So there is a lot going on, but it's mostly like, it's, a lot of technical things, and then the need for continued building fund donations so that we can actually raise these buildings.
I was going to ask you, how can people support you? Obviously, they can follow on social media. I always say that that's the free and easy way, right? Follow on
Mhm.
social media and share, but obviously donations. And I know that every little bit can help.
Every little bit does help. And so we have our nonprofit in America is called St. Francis Ministries. And so it's stfrancisministries.org, and just donate there. You can find all the info on our website or contact me if you have a question. And obviously, one-time donations are great for the building fund. And then also just joining us every month, just sponsoring our school, sponsoring us, walking with us is what I always say, is just because it is step by step. And again, when I was 21, I thought all this would happen a lot faster. And then I realized like life is a thing and things happen the way that they do. And so slowly by slowly. So I always ask people to walk with us prayerfully. And I know donating, $35 a month, and then prayerfully just journeying with us, supporting us on social media, like watching our updates and just being with us month to month as we are trying to do every single aspect of this. So, yeah.
People can make such an impact, and I
Mhm.
hope that people will donate. I'll be sure to put the websites in the show notes so people can easily find ways to donate. I'll put your social media links so people can follow everything that you're doing. I love following your social media and yeah, seeing all the great work that you're doing and seeing some of the stories that you're sharing as well. Rannah, before I let you go, I'm just curious because I know you've been through a lot. You know, I know that this work, there are days that it's so joyful and you see so much success with these kids, but then there are also really difficult days, right? Where you're experiencing so much, you're along with these kids, you're seeing sometimes these really heartbreaking situations or heartbreaking stories, but every day you keep doing it. You keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep doing this work. If you could get to the very root of why you do what you do, why you're so passionate about this work, what would you say that root is?
I believe that we're here to love and be loved. And I love Mother Teresa so much, and we are supposed to serve the poor, no matter what form that comes in. If it's, food or spiritually poor, with our friends and with our family. I think at the core of it, I I can't even fathom or see any reason not to help someone. And so it's very obvious for me, and it's been obvious since I was a child to see, to walk with somebody who is suffering. It doesn't always mean you're not going to take away the suffering. You're not going to do anything. You walk with somebody who is suffering and you hold them prayerfully and do what you are called to do with the resources that you have. And it is that one person right in front of you. Um, so even with our students, I look and like, I would want 500. Like, that's what you want. You want the big numbers. You're like, let's help everyone. Well, you can't. And you really won't at your core. I'm just one person. And so I think with our 50 students, it's been the beauty of just those individuals and walking with them. And it is really difficult. You are right in that. I've never I've never fathomed a reason, or maybe it's because I grew up already since I was a child that life was really difficult. So I don't know why I would expect anything else. And it's in my deeper knowingness, it's obvious to me to keep moving forward and to keep loving. And that love may like look different if you're building a well or you're giving a meal or you're just sitting and listening or you're praying for somebody that you've never even met or ever seen. Um, I firmly believe that's what we're supposed to do. I firmly believe that we are supposed to help the poor all of the time.
And it doesn't always have to be the big things. It can sometimes be the little things that make a massive impact. And I'm just thinking about people donating to the great work that you're doing. People don't have to go to Uganda necessarily. I mean, I'm sure you would love it if people wanted to come and visit or volunteer or be a part of the school, but we can all do something to serve the poor. And so I'm just so grateful to know you, Rannah, and to get to share your story. But before I let you go, I obviously wanted to have you on this podcast because you are a one girl revolution. You are changing the world every single day through your life. But who is a one girl revolution in your life? Who's a woman or girl that inspires you?
Probably my aunt, and always will be, and it's gonna make me cry now. Um, I think her over my entire life, she has been there for me steadily, and she's been my example of how to love and be there for others and be the auntie to other people. That's what I always think about. So our students at the school, they're not my children. I definitely feel like I birthed this school. It does feel like that. Um, but I always try to think of her and doing that auntie role. And she has just been there quietly sometimes my entire life. But every time I had needed to, since I was a little child, even up to now, um, she has been there. And she is a big donor of our school as well. She never wants to go to Uganda. That is not her thing. And that is fine. And it doesn't matter. She's so there in spirit and there with me. So I think she would be my one girl, because I look up to her so much to be, I don't know how to stay just steady. She's just been so steady with her faith. And I know she's gone through her own things in her life, but she's been my aunt. And so she gives me everything. And I don't think I can give her anything, but I hope to be like her towards other people, of just loving them in the way that I can and that I'm called to be, and just being steady. And so I want to be steady with our students, of just being there, no matter if it's up or if it's down, or if it takes us 10 more years to build this new school. We're just going to steadily be there, and the resources God gives, we will use them. But otherwise, it's just silently being present in someone's life is what she's done for me. And I think it's been the most incredible thing, is she didn't have to do some big bang pow thing, but to be there steady, always listening, always on the phone, always praying, always supporting me. So I think she's the one.
We can all do that, right? Like, I'm a firm
Yeah.
believer that every single woman and girl is a one girl revolution. And I love that you brought that story up, because it doesn't always have to be that we have to found an organization or do something big or move to Uganda. Sometimes it's just that steady, like,
Mhm.
walk with someone else or other people in our life that can make such a big impact. But
Yeah.
Rannah, before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
Probably, though, to go to the core of it for every woman and girl, is to make sure every day to sit in silence. No matter what religion you are or whatever you subscribe to, every person needs to sit in silence every day, moments of silence consistently, and meditate on and think about the things in your life and self reflect. And so, if you're going through something, or you're trying to discern something for the future, or you want to heal from the past, or you just have to get through today, or you have a ton of joy, sit and take that in. And just, sometimes it can be hard and agitating. And I know that for myself, where I want to ignore the silence because it means I need to face things. But I think my continual advice to everyone is to take time and sit in silence and really think, but not with your head and not with your heart. Think deeply with your intuition, deeply, and follow deep, lasting peace. It is so deep. And the more you sit in that every day consistently for a year, you're going to know which one is the fleeting peace or the fleeting fun, and which one is the deep, like, it's almost like a voice, and it's like a deep feeling of your intuition. And I think women have that. We have that so much, especially as we grow and we're mothers, and like biologically, that's what we can become. And if you do become a mother, you take care of every single thing about your child. Your child makes one little cry, and you know exactly what that cry means. And so, as a young girl, as a woman, is like fostering that intuition and deeply following that, and be really, really true and honest with yourself, and just try to deeply follow that. That's what my advice would be.
I felt that to my core. I could just feel as you were saying, and that's a reminder, even to me, to every person, to spend those moments in silence and just
Yeah.
be present to ourselves. We don't do that enough. So thank you for sharing that. And Rannah, thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast, and thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Thank you so much, Kate, for having me.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.